guys seen this first part before. Just humor me. So then, like I said, part 1. Please explain how the Coriolis effect can exist when the necessary conditions for it to exist are 2 separate coordinate systems, that is, reference frames. One rotating non-inertial, the Earth, and one rotating inertial, the Atmo, and everything in it. If you go to your little wiki references, numpties, Globe Heretics, it's going to show you in visual form right here what the Coriolis effect is. Now, if you go down to the bottom down here, it has a little explanation. It says, in the inertial frame of reference, upper part of the picture, the black ball moves in a straight line. However, the observer in the red dot, who is standing in the rotating non-inertial reference frame, or frame of reference, the lower part of the picture, you see what they do? The important part here is that they identify that you must have an inertial reference frame and a rotating non-inertial reference frame. You see that with the Coriolis? That's what I want you to get out of this. That's all we need, right? So, that violates the law of non-contradiction number 1, because we need the 2 separate reference frames. What do they say all the time? We only have one. That's going to come up big here down below. So, number 2, show an actual demonstration, since we only have one reference frame, where gases and gas rotate in lockstep with a rotating solid body just 5 centimeters above the surface, then provide the mechanism. You do understand gases have no intermolecular bonds. Obviously rhetorical. So do gas molecules attach to the Earth and each other by Velcro, superglue, molasses, pixie dust, other? And gas molecules, air, vibrate and move freely and randomly at high speeds. Here's a good visual here for the idiot spinning space monkeys. The Globe Heretics. You see this over here? It makes a comparison between the behavior of solids, liquids, and gases from the chemistry department at Purdue University. One of your high priests there, baltards. See, your Globe Heretics. You don't follow your own globe religion. I know it like the back of my hand. You see this right here? You see what's happening to these gas molecules? They're moving randomly at high speeds in all directions. Duh. So, back to the story. Question. How can gas molecules that make up the atmosphere, which is a contradiction in terms, that move freely and randomly at high speeds, yet, according to the intellectual elite booger-eating baltards, rotate in unison, that is not moving freely and randomly at high speeds from the Earth from west to east? You see the contradiction? Yeah, that's number 2. You're done for right there. You're done for with each of these. But why are we going to stop there? Where's the fun in that? Number 3, please explain the existence, I love this one, of east, north, and south surface, mid, and high-level winds on a spinning ball that has an atmo, that's air, wind, and gas, rotating with it from west to east. See the contradiction? You can't be going in one direction from west to east and then have them going in all different directions, east, north, and south. Can't do it. It's a contradiction. That's number 3. That's one of the well duh contradictions, right? That second graders can pummel you with. I love those. They hold a special place in my heart. Bonus question. How can you have different wind speeds moving in different directions simultaneously at differing elevations of the atmo, all the while the atmo is collectively spinning east in unison the same? That's more or less what I just said above. It'd be easier reconciling married bachelors. That's violation of the law of non-contradiction number 4. By the way, booger eaters, these are contradictory statements. They're mutually exclusive. Number 1, the atmo spins with the Earth. Number 2, the existence of east, north, and south surface wind and high-level winds. They can't be true at the same time. They're mutually exclusive. Which do you think's false? not even speaking to the differing wind directions and speeds at many levels of the atmosphere simultaneously. That's a primary school example. Like I said, the lower clouds moving different directions and speeds than the higher clouds. And don't try to muddy the picture with your Elmer Fudd sophistry. I'm not saying clouds are gases. I'm saying the winds, which are gases, move the clouds. You follow that? I highly doubt it. I'm not going to give any pictures because we've all seen it. Or GIFs. Moreover, following the Mensa booger-eating Baltard's yarn, every cubic nanometer of atmosphere traveling horizontally from the equator to the center of rotation must have differing tangential speeds. And every cubic nanometer of atmosphere rising in elevation from each respective horizontal cubic nanometer of atmosphere must have differing tangential speeds. In fact, the higher the elevation, the faster they'll need to travel to keep up. And all of this rolling along at different speeds in unison east, eh? Ha! Violation of the first law of thermodynamics and the law of non-contradiction number 5. Well, you guys are really on a roll now. This is so far beyond preposterous ludicrousness absurdity. Evolution, whatever that is, and yes, I'm still laughing, multiverses and married bachelors are blushing. And does anyone know how far up this increasing speed rope-a-dope fairy tale spinning atmo ends? I'd like to see that. It'll give a whole new meaning to guillotine wind shear. Goodness gracious, people. Are the gas molecules attached to each other? I brought this up before. By Velcro, glue, pixie dust, or other? And where is the energy coming from the continuous shot in the arm injections needed to keep each successive cubic nanometer of atmosphere higher elevation brethren in tow? That whole thing is death blow number 1. It has 5 sub-death blows that will kill it, each of them by themselves or by themselves. So everyone's got this, because I've presented on this many times in the past. Right? Now for the grand Baltard belly laugher finale. Hold on, folks. The summer of booger-eating Baltard's wiki parroting pretender clown contradictory horse shit of the ages and shows beyond any shadow of a doubt, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that each Baltard booger eater would fail 6th grade intro to physics. Here it comes at you. Number 1, QE. So, booger eaters, granting your tear-jerking 1st grade debunked belly laugher, the atmosphere, contradiction in terms, spins with the earth, catastrophe above that I just nuked. How do you have Earth-based Coriolis effect? Guess what they say now? Everyone's heard them. Booger-eating Baltards, the conservation of angular momentum, QE. Thank you. I love that. You see, that's my kind of party. That's right. Let's go to Khan Academy. Let's see what they're talking about here. In physics, the term conservation refers to something which doesn't change. Baltards don't even know that. They don't even know what conservation means. But I digress. This means that the variable in an equation, what the heck, which represents a conserved quantity, is constant over time. It has the same value both before and after an event. There are many conserved quantities in physics. They are often remarkably useful for making predictions. Those aren't scientific predictions, but I digress. In what would otherwise be very complicated situations. In mechanics, there are 3 fundamental quantities which are conserved. These are momentum, energy, and angular momentum. The conservation of momentum is mostly used for describing collisions between objects. When do we describe collisions between objects in our genre? Never. Listen up. This is the really, really important part. Just as with the other conservation principles, there's a catch. Conservation of momentum applies only to an isolated system of objects. Very important. This one comes right out and says it. You're going to see why here in a few minutes. In this case, an isolated system is one that is not acted on by a force external to the system. This is going to come home to roost big time over the next few minutes. Let me say that again. Conservation of momentum applies only to an isolated system of objects. Only. You can only apply it in that case. Right? Because you need an external force to act on the system. Oh, man, this is good. Well, ruh-roh, Shaggy. From Hyperphysics, Georgia State University. An isolated system implies a collection of matter which does not interact with the rest of the universe at all. And like we already know that. We have to know that from the definition above, right? To invoke the conservation of momentum. But I digress. I'll say it again. An isolated system implies a collection of matter which does not interact with the rest of the universe at all. This is really important. And as far as we know, there are really no such systems. What? So, how in the flying Fukuyama are you booger-eating baltards applying the conservation of angular momentum to your fairy tale spinning globetard? How are you doing that? Are you saying the Earth is an isolated system? Yep, you must to apply this. You can't apply this unless you say the Earth is an isolated system. You're on crack. Isolated systems don't exist in nature. Like I said, but hyperphysics.edu, that's Georgia State University, just told you there are no isolated systems in the universe. Isn't the Earth part of the universe, baltards? Ya window-licking, crayon-munching clowns? Death blow number 2. How you like me now? It's going to get worse. Number 2, granting both, we're going to grant them both belly-laughing disasters to make this a lot more fun. We'll grant them A, the atmosphere spins with the Earth, which is a tear-jerking belly laugher. And then we're gonna grant them the conservation of angular momentum they just conjured from Wiki, that they have no clue what it is. They just say it. Sounds science-y. We're gonna give them both of those. Now, baltard booger eaters, can you tell us what is conserving angular momentum specifically, please? I want to know that. They'll bumble and fumble and stumble because they wouldn't know, like I said, what the conservation of angular momentum was if it climbed up their arses and started kicking footballs wrapped in concertina wire. You already know that so far. It's going to get worse down below. So angular momentum, what is it? They don't know what conservation is, and they definitely don't know what angular momentum is. Angular momentum, from Vanderbilt, by the way, angular momentum is a measure of momentum of an object around an axis. That's pretty damn easy. Pretty simple, right? Yeah, but there's 2 types. You'll never get here. I'll tell you that. When I ask them what types they are, they go into friggin' implosion mode because they're clueless. There's 2 types, spin angular and orbital angular momentum. Just how they sound. Spin angular of an object is as defined as the angular momentum about its center of mass coordinate. I'm going to show you here down here in a little bit. Orbital angular momentum of an object about a chosen origin is defined as the angular momentum of the center of mass about the origin. So then there's 2 more subtypes below those 2. They're totally lost then. So we got point objects. That's just how it sounds. An object accelerating around a point. Like a ball attached to a string that you start spinning above your head. The formula, L, angular momentum, equals R, radians, times P, linear momentum. And then extended objects, and there's going to be a little picture down here for your viewing pleasure, is the whole object rotating about its own axis like a spinning orb. The formula is L equals I, rotational inertia, times omega. That's angular velocity. radians per unit time. So, here we go. Angular momentum, point object, and extended object. There they are. Right there for you. Got that lasered into your retinas, baltards, because this is probably the first time you ever seen it. Right? Question. Which one, booger eaters? Point or extended object? You'd think this would be easy to answer. I'll tell you what, you get them to this position and ask them this question, get your popcorn. They are absolutely clueless. Let's use one of their belly-laughing dumpster fire examples that they always use, right? Hovering helicopters. We're told by the bumbling globe-tired heretics that because the atmosphere spins with the Earth, that hovering helicopters do likewise. Well, if that be the case, remember those contingent necessary facts that have to be true? This is one of those cases. Well, if that be the case, then the hovering helicopter would have angular momentum. Duh! Right? Measured in radians or degrees or revolutions per unit time. Hence, it would have an angular velocity. Uh-oh. This is the primary school pummeling. Let's go look what hover means. From Britannica.com, hover, to float in the air without moving in any direction. That's interesting. While velocity, from the wiki clowns, is the directional speed of an object in motion. How can a hovering helicopter have an angular velocity yet not move in any direction? Por favor. Oh boy. And then you switch to acceleration. I know you do. And of course you don't know what acceleration is either. We've proven that a number of times through the years. So you move on to acceleration. You got a big problem here. From Wiki, acceleration, it's just the rate of change of velocity. So speed or direction is velocity. So any change in one of either of those is an acceleration. WorksRad.net. A hovering helicopter is considered at rest since the body has zero acceleration and so zero net force. Uh-oh. How can a hovering helicopter that, according to the globe-tired goobers, be rotating with the atmosphere and Earth? Ergo, both are constantly accelerating. And then at the same time have a hovering helicopter rotating with the atmosphere and Earth and have zero acceleration? Por favor. Huh? You feeling me? Death blow number 3. We ain't done. How you like that? How you like me now, baltards? You feel that medievalness. You feel that desecration. I do. I feel it. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, number 3. From Phys Liber text, the law of conservation of angular momentum. Let's start getting specific here. Very simply, from Phys Liber text, when no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. It's just that simple, right? Now you can see, remember the definition I gave above, that it had to be in an isolated system? Well, in an isolated system, you have no external torques. You see it here. When no external torques act on a rotating object, yeah, it has to be in an isolated system. You see how they dovetail? The law of conservation of angular momentum would never be described or exist, shaking my frigging head, without an inertial frame of reference, because there'd never be a case where external torques even frigging exist. That's a little bit too high level for you, ain't it? You can't get there. Just go ask one of your slobber nurses to translate that for you. You frigging clowns. Oh, it's going to get worse. Moreover, from Khan Academy, the concept of momentum, this is me, sorry. The concept of momentum conservation comes from and is a direct consequence of Newton's third law. Khan Academy backs me up. Conservation of momentum is actually a direct consequence of Newton's third law. Now, everyone knows this, right? Watch this. Watch this epic train wreck of a disaster. From Boston University Physics Department, a good question to ask is, do Newton's laws apply all the time? In most cases, they do. But if we're trying to analyze motion in an accelerated reference frame, while we're spinning around would be a good example, then Newton's laws are not valid. Let me say that again. Then Newton's laws are not valid. Duh. A reference frame in which Newton's laws are valid, according to these guys, is known as an inertial reference frame. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. So, pray tell, booger eaters, how in the flying Fukuyama can you invoke the law of conservation of angular momentum, which is a direct consequence of Newton's third law, whilst Newton's third law is only valid in an inertial reference frame? Can you riddle me that? If the penny hasn't dropped yet, it's going to drop right now. If the atmosphere, which is a contradiction in terms, spins with the Earth, which, by the way, violates Boyle's law, Charles' law, Gay-Lussac's law, Avogadro's law, parts of Dalton's law, the second law of thermodynamics, Brownian motion, and first-grade coherency, then all we'd have is a single rotating, non-inertial spinning reference frame, folks. We got a big problem. From Britannica, Coriolis force, also called Coriolis effect in classical mechanics, is an inertial force, described by the 19th century French engineer mathematician Gustave Gaspard Coriolis in 1835. How can you have an inertial force without an inertial reference frame, you ignorant frigging mongs? Riddle me that. And then you say, well, we never said that, QE. Really? Here's the poster child. Hillbilly Blue Balls, the redneck retard, a.k.a. the photosynthetic redneck, a.k.a. Mr. Gumby football field, states, it is one non-inertial reference frame. That's where Coriolis takes place, not two reference frames. Kablooey. You clown. You unimaginable clown. You would fail. Hillbilly. It's not only hillbilly. You would fail 5th grade intro to physics. Without a doubt, right here. I can't show it any more clear. It gets worse. Then he says the Coriolis effect is the law of conservation of angular momentum. You folks have heard that out there before. He's not the only one that says that, right? I'm just using him as a poster child example. So, again, how in the flying Fukuyama can you invoke the law of conservation of angular momentum, which is a direct consequence of Newton's third law, whilst Newton's third law is only valid in an inertial reference frame? Ha! How can you do that? Unbelievable. Remember, from Boston University Physics Department, we're going to go over this again. A good question to ask is, do Newton's laws apply all the time? In most cases, they do. But if we're trying to analyze motion in an accelerated reference frame, you see with the Earth rotating, it's constantly accelerating. Most people don't know that, but I digress. While we're spinning around would be a good example. Then Newton's laws are not valid. Even from your own priests. What are you going to do with that? Nothing. Trying to red herring fallacy away with your Elmer Fudd sophistry because you're absolutely clueless. And I've just proven it in spades. A reference frame in which Newton's laws are valid is known as an inertial reference frame. So, booger-eating hillbilly baltard, Bum sniffer. You only have a non-inertial spinning reference frame. How can you invoke either the Coriolis effect or the conservation of angular momentum when the Coriolis effect, is an inertial force? You can't do that. You're in a category error. It's non sequitur on steroids. So again, how can you have an inertial force without an inertial reference frame? Simple as that. I'll tell you how Hillbilly and all of his booger-eating, ball-tart, bum-sniffing boyfriends can do it. I'll let you know. Each are demonstrated mindless, wiki-parroting, pretender clown, clinical level, Dunning-Kruger, abject delusional morons that couldn't pass 6th grade intro to physics or a 50-level basic reasoning course that are hell-bent on showing the world either in text, voice chat, or recorded videos, if you can believe it. They're the ass clown dumb fucks of the millennium, masquerading as intellectuals. That's what we got here. Mr. Magoo, Elmer Fudd, and Baby Huey are doubled over in the corner, vapor locking from your tear-jerking belly laugher syndrome. That's what's happening here. And you think you're intellectuals. Psst, booger eaters. Everyone that can fog a mirror, that is everyone that graduated 6th grade intro to physics, can see you. Hello, McFly! Hey, don't worry. You do you. P.S. The Coriolis effect is the law of conservation of angular momentum. Remember he said that statement up above. Well, we don't want to let that go, do we? I don't think we do. So Hillbilly Blue Balls, this is what he said. And you've heard it from other booger-eating ball tarts. The Coriolis effect is the law of conservation of angular momentum. Huh, really? Okay, well, let's check. Law of conservation of angular momentum. I have 3 citations here. I wanted to give them a fair shake, see if there's any difference. So, from Phys Libre text, you already seen this one. Law of conservation of angular momentum. When no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. Pretty fair. Open text BC. Angular momentum is conserved when net external torque is 0. Pretty much lines up with the top one. Good to go. No contradictions. From Lumen Learning. 11.3, conservation of angular momentum. In the absence of external torques, a system's total angular momentum is conserved. Well, that lines up with every single one of them. So simply, we could just use the top one. So I'm going to drag the top one with me, and we're going to put it up against definitions of, guess what, baltards? Yeah, amoebas. Yeah, Coriolis effect. Let's see if they're the same. So, we got the law of conservation of angular momentum right here again. When no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. Well, we got physics about, used to be physics about, definition of the Coriolis effect. Let's see if they line up. The Coriolis effect is an apparent effect, an illusion produced by a rotating reference frame. Funny, I don't see apparent effects and illusions up here. You? This type of effect is also known as a fictitious force or an inertial force. I don't see any fictitious forces or inertial forces up here that would train wreck this. Right? Because angular momentum is opposite of an inertial force. So we got the antithesis going on here so far. The Coriolis effect occurs when an object moving in a straight path. What? You said angular momentum up here. Angular, not straight. That is a direct antithesis of what we're talking about. Do I need to continue? This definition, it even says it again. When a straight path is viewed from a non-fixed reference frame, typically this moving frame of reference is the Earth, which rotates at a fixed speed. When you view an object in the air that is following, here we go again, a straight path. Well, you're talking about angular up here. That's a direct contradiction. This is train wreck. The object is not actually off its course. Where is an object not actually off its course up here in angular momentum? Are these definitions, are these the same? Perhaps if you're on a lewd, garnished, shroom-induced coma following a 6-month Jack Daniels bender, you're busted. That's simple. Let's try it again. So let's roll with conservation of angular momentum. We'll drag it down here. We'll go with Encyclopedia's definition. Remember the conservation of angular momentum. When no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. From Encyclopedia, Coriolis effect. Within its rotating coordinate system, the object acted on by the Coriolis effect appears to deflect. Is there any appearing to deflections up here? I don't see any. Can these baltards read? Maybe we ought to give them a small grade or a Fleisch-Kincaid reading level assessment. That's what I'm thinking we need to do, because I think you're friggin' illiterate. There's no appearance of deflection up here in this definition. This deflection is not real. Is there any not real deflections in this definition? Anyone? Can you read any? You wouldn't think so. I don't see any. Are these the same? Perhaps if you were on a shroom, garnished, lewd-induced coma following a 6-month wild turkey bender. Perhaps, maybe. I doubt it even then. Let's try it again. Law of conservation of angular momentum. When no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. Let's go to Seagar Douglas, Introduction to Ocean Sciences, Critical Concept Reminders. This is a university-level textbook defining the Coriolis effect. When set in motion, freely moving objects, including air and water, clouds, water vapor, that's my addition, move in, here we go again, straight paths. Where are straight paths with the conservation of angular momentum, baltards? Again, a direct contradiction. While the Earth continues to rotate independently. Uh-oh. Because freely moving objects are not carried with the Earth as it rotates, 2 separate reference frames, by the way, knuckle draggers, they are subject to an apparent deflection. Are there any apparent deflections up here in the conservation of angular momentum? I don't see any. Called the Coriolis effect. To an observer rotating with the Earth, freely moving objects that travel, here we go again, in a straight line. This says straight, this says angular. And these are the same? Really? Perhaps we were on a rum-garnished, lewd-induced coma following a 6-month shroom bender. You friggin' clowns! My word! Why do I even have to do this? Goodness gracious! Law of conservation, and let's finish this up because I'm getting pissed. This is pathetic! Law of conservation of angular momentum. When no external torques act on a rotating object, its angular momentum is conserved. Look, Ma! The helicopter's got no external torques. Its rotation is conserved. Look, Ma! The hot air balloon got no external torques. It's rotating around its center axis, and angular momentum is conserved. What in the great googly moogly is going on here? Huh? You pretender clown frauds. You're exposed. That's you. And your fairy tale religion. Take a good look. I summarily destroyed it.